from Little R&R, and I'm here today. Hi, this is Roslyn from Little R&R, and I'm here today with Mandy from Women of Worship. And we have a really special topic that we're going to be talking about today that I'm really excited about. Mandy is raising funds right now to adopt a child, and we're going to talk with her about her adoption process. And then today we're sharing about a bundle that we are selling to help her raise funds for that adoption. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the interview. So first, Mandy, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your blog, Women of Worship?
Well, like Ross said, I'm Mandy. I'm from Women of Worship, and I have been blogging for about a year now, consistently, and we blog about just a woman's life of worship, and that includes everything in your life, from your parenting to your mothering to your time in the Word, and we also talk about some other issues like adoption and infertility, and being a bonus mom, because I am the mom to 3 children who lost their no, honey, stay there. Stay there. No, you need to go up to your room, okay? Sorry, we've got a little one that's awake. And we have I'm sorry. I'm totally lost. Lost my train of thought because she's down here. We need to go upstairs. Yes, please. And so it's very early in the morning, so they're starting to wake. So I blog about all different kinds of topics in that. I was born and raised in Florida, and 2 years ago I moved to South Carolina, and with my husband and our 3 children. So.
Wonderful. Well, tell us a little bit more about your family and how, a little bit more about your adjustment period and process of becoming an instant mom to 3 kids.
Well, that was exciting. I always say and I do in a kiss, I became a wife and a mom. Most people become a wife that way. Some people become a mom that way. But the difference is that my husband was a widow. He had lost his wife, and so the children that we have didn't have a mom anymore on earth. And so, unlike a lot of times when there is a second marriage, the kids that we had didn't have somebody else that they were going to for mommy, and so I really did become mom. My other big running joke is that when Scott was with me, his oldest was 10. Our oldest was 9.5 or 10. I have to think more to figure out exactly, but she was at that age where she kind of needed to have the girl talk, and so I was taking her out to ask her if she would be in our wedding and for some girl time, and he's like, well, you better have the talk with her because she hasn't had it yet. And he's like, and we don't know, at these days and age, you don't know when they're going to get that visitor. And so I was like, oh my word, he threw me in the deep end. Like, I just said yes, and he was like throwing me in the deep end. So our children are currently 13 and 10 and 6, and like I said, we've been married for 2 years. It was a crazy transition because not only did I move, I became a wife and a mom. I moved from my hometown where I had grown up to a totally different state. I take the leave and cleave thing very seriously. And even in my wedding vows, I use the verse in Ruth where it says, where you go, I'll go. For who you love, I'll love. And I took those verses and wrote them into my vow because I really felt like I could relate to that. And so it hasn't always been easy, but the Lord has given us so much grace. We have not had, as of yet, we haven't had those moments of, you're not my mom, I don't like you, I hate you. We haven't had any of those things because I believe the Lord really did plant our family. Going back to my childhood for a second, I never knew my biological dad, and so my mom married when I was 3, and so I never knew anything but love from my stepdad, and I've never really met my real dad. And so I feel like since birth, God has prepared me not only for the adoption journey that we're currently on, but the adoption journey we've already been
Yeah.
on loving children that don't come from your womb,
Yeah.
because it takes more than DNA to make a family.
Yes.
So,
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. I love what you just said. That was beautiful. Tell us what made you decide to adopt.
well, the first thing was right before we got married, I had started having some female issues, and so I struggle with a slight form of infertility. It could be corrected with medicine. I could take medication, but we sought counsel with a friend of ours that was a medical doctor as well as an adoptive family. And their suggestion was, well, you can pay for these treatments, but it might not work. And a lot of people go through infertility treatments, and I know some of you are probably out there, and you've had failed attempt after failed attempt after failed attempt, and that drains you emotionally. I can relate a little bit because even though I knew I would struggle with that, when Scott and I first got married, every month, and on the months that I did have a cycle that was regular, I would just be devastated because I wasn't pregnant. And not that we wanted to get pregnant right away, but we kind of felt like if we were going to, it would probably be early on in our marriage. And it just didn't happen. And we weren't trying to prevent it because we knew we would have issues. And so we felt like if the Lord was going to give us a baby through my womb, that we didn't want to prevent that. And it just didn't happen. And so the counsel that we got was to be a good stewardship of our time, our emotions, and our resources.
Yeah.
And the more we had talked, my heart had always been for adoption. You know, I I've done a lot of mission work, and so I've gone to some places and seen some things that were really hard to see. And so initially, when we talked about getting married, we said we would grow our family through adoption, and that was we were going to adopt a child overseas. God has changed our adoption story a little bit already, because I had a niece born about a year ago, and there is nothing like holding a newborn baby. And my husband realized at that moment that by adopting overseas, we wouldn't get those early moments. And so for this first adoption, we are open to a second one, but for this first one, we are doing a domestic, I live in the United States, domestic United States adoption, because we can have that infant experience. But we really believe Scripture is all about adoption. You know, it talks in Matthew about how Jesus wanted the children to come to him. And, you know, we want our home to be Jesus to other people. And so we want children in our home, from our children to their friends to any children that God would have us adopt. We want these children in our home. And, you know, the book of James talks about how pure religion is loving the least of these, the widows and the orphans. You know, they are out there and nobody loves them and cares for them. I already kind of have a ministry to a widow. That's a daily part of our life, that he has lost a wife before, and that is a ministry. It's different. Being married to somebody who's been married and lost a spouse is totally, I've never been married to somebody otherwise, but from talking to friends, it's different. You feel different things. You help them process this loss of somebody that they loved in a similar way to the way they love you. They've been in love twice, and they'll tell you they've been in love twice. So it's a different thing. And widows and orphans, they both want that unconditional love that you can have here on earth. And the only way you can have that is with your spouse or with your children. And it's the best way you can be showing God's love on earth, is when you love a widow and when you love orphans. And even though this baby that we will adopt will never remember being an orphan, you have to remember that in this birth mom's eyes and in the Lord's eyes, they're already created. And this mom, this tummy mom, this birth mom, she can't be the parent. And so even in the womb, and I'm a very big believer in life at conception, even in the womb, this child is already an orphan. And through everything we've learned through our adoption process so far, children aren't fresh plates when they come out of the womb. They are already, as a mom, you are what you feed them, what kind of environment you're on. All those things are already preparing them for the world outside of you, and so they're not necessarily clean slates. As much as we want to think that this is just, this baby's not been through anything, you don't know the trauma or the things that baby could have gone through while they were in there. And so this child is an orphan. A lot of people say that domestic adoption, when you adopt this way, isn't adopting an orphan. But had you not adopted them, there are two choices that they would have had: an orphan in the foster system in the United States or abortion. And that's two extremes, but it's the truth. I think you might have asked about what the adoption process might be like. I can't. Your voice is gone from my side of the screen, so I'm hoping you can still hear me. So our adoption process has been long and it's been hard. It's a lot of waiting, a lot of hurry up and wait. We turn in paperwork and they have due dates and deadlines, and it's bring me this money and bring me this paperwork, and you hurry up and get all these things done, and then you wait. So right now we are in the home study process, which we will be finished with on Monday, which for those of you watching, I know this will be later, but it's just a few days away. And at that point we will have an approved home study, which means that at any point we could welcome a baby into our home. However, Scott and I feel very strongly about trying to do this as debt-free as we can, and that's why the e-bundle and things like that. My good friends Misty and Bridget and Rosalind and so many others have heard that heart, and so we have decided we won't go on the list to accept the child until we can come up with the funds to do that. As of yet, we have currently paid about a third of those out of pocket completely on our own. We saved for 2 years to do that, but we knew that it would take another 5 or 6 years if we were on our saving plan to raise all of those funds. And so that's why we're coming to all of you and to the church at large and asking for other people to get behind the mission that God has placed and the ministry God has placed to us. Bethany is who we're going through. It's a Christian service. They deal with children all around the world and locally and domestically. And so they do subsidize a big chunk of it through generous donations. So we're about halfway done with our fundraising. But the other thing that Bethany asks is that you have some level of openness with your birth mom. So that means we will have a semi-open adoption to an open adoption, depending on how the relationship is built with our birth mom. And at that point, we will have ministry opportunities with these birth moms. And there are a lot of other religions and cultures in the United States, and our birth mom may be one of those religion or cultures. And so, we're really hoping that we can share the gospel even with our birth mom, and have a continuing relationship with her. So the process has been long. I blog about it at Women of Worship, and usually about every week to 2 weeks, there's a new post about it, and there's a lot going on the website right now about it. So you can always come over there, and I try to be very honest on the blog. I've given out numbers. I've given out, everything, because I want people to be educated, because when you go into an adoption, I think it's important to have as much education as you can. So. Well, if families that are considering adoption, first of all, you need to hold your hand open. If I have learned anything in all of this, and this is what the Lord has really been teaching me, when I came into the adoption process, I was the one that was, whatever God gives us, whatever God gives us. And I learned that very quickly. I began to hold my hand very tightly. And you can quickly make adoption your idol. It can all consume you, and it does. I mean, you are raising money. You have to make a photo book and all this stuff for your profile for people to look at. As a family of 5, they have to meet our kids, and you have to go through social worker stuff, and they have to ask you questions, and they're going to get deep. They're going to get personal. I mean, they ask me questions about how I grew up, my family, how my kids have dealt with family changes. Unfortunately, we had a separation in our family last year, and so they asked questions about how our kids have dealt with that, and how our kids have dealt with the addition of a cousin and things like that. So you have to be ready to be an open book, because they're going to ask you a lot of deep questions. You have to be willing that not everybody's going to support you, and the people, and this is the biggest and the hardest thing for me, the people that I grew up with, or that have supported me in so many other areas of life, I thought would quickly just rally behind me, and we would raise this money, and it was going to be done. I know that this family and this family and this family, you can't count on that. You have to rely on the Lord. The Lord's going to provide that money, and He wants to do it in a way that He's going to get the glory. If you are a believer in Christ, it's all about Christ's glory. It's all about your worship. And how are you going to give Him the glory? How are you going to worship Him the best through this? And so I have learned that it has been people in the funniest places, including this e-bundle, where God has provided for us. And some of the amazing bloggers that have, who are coming behind us and supporting, and even just promoting. Maybe they didn't give, but they're going to promote. And, people that totally humbling to me. People I've met 1 and 2 times that who I'm just Facebook friends with, and they're supporting this. And so God is doing something much bigger through our adoption than just touching our families. He's giving us an opportunity to touch the world. And I always said when I was younger, I wanted to be that missionary. And my friend Courtney, a mutual friend of mine and Rosalind's from Women Living Well, she says, that God gave her the opportunity to be a missionary at her kitchen table. And I'm actually sitting where I blog. I kind of blog on the floor, but we're sitting on here, and God's given me that opportunity to be a missionary in my own home and to share the gospel. I know my blog does reach other countries, and so I'm very excited about that. And we want to use this as another way that we can share the glory and the gospel with others. So if you're going to adopt, just remember that when you hold your fist like this, not only does God have to pry your fingers open, but He can't put anything else in your hand. When you're like this, all you get is this, whatever you're holding to. If He doesn't pry your hand open, to take it from you because you're not giving him surrender, he can't also put anything else in your hand. And if I stay like this through this part of the adoption process, he can't put a baby there. Like a baby can't, I can't hold a baby with clenched fists. And so I have to open those hands daily, sometimes moment by moment, before the Lord, so that he can put his desires in there. So many people quote Psalm 37:4, and they say, delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. And I have learned that as you delight in the Lord, he gives you the desires of your heart, but your heart matches his. And so he's able to give you the desires of his heart, which are often different in the world's terminology.